Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 4th chapter.
Glory to you, Lord.
Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was famished. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, 'One does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God.'" Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, 'He will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone.'" Jesus said to him, "Again it is written, 'Do not put the Lord your God to the test.'" So again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor, and he said to him, "All these I will give you, if you will fall down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, 'Worship the Lord your God and serve only him.'" Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came and waited on him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord.
And so I thought that we should make sure that we had a little commercial break today.
Look at you, so dashing.
Come on. Nowadays, lots of people go by themselves.
No, they don't.
Hey, son. Have fun tonight.
Well, I'm sure that watching that commercial, probably many of us remember high school dances. Remember all that sort of goes with it, you know, whether or not you're pretty enough, or you're cool enough, or any of those things, you know, being accepted. But that's not all that commercial has in it. That commercial illustrates very, very well the power of sex and scheming, and it also illustrates little white lies, beginning with the mother. Because she totally just wants her son to feel better, right? He's not buying it, but still the temptation to tell him that little lie of, really, everybody goes to the prom by themselves, is so seductive. No harm intended at all. But the little sister, she is fully aware that the mother is lying through her teeth. And so she puts her brother and her mother in place by saying, no, they don't. She tells a sarcastic, laced truth. Sibling power play at its very, very best. We learn so very young what the gaining of the upper hand can do in any given situation. And we carry that with us on into adulthood, exerting power through sex and mind games and money, which is exactly why the dad flips him the keys to his car, this very cool, slick, expensive vehicle, which is sure to make all the girls go gaga. The car is a nice, quick fix. And we see that it truly is, right? That Audi totally improves the son's mood all of a sudden. The dad, again, out of his great, great love for his son, just wants to make things a little bit better. Although the sarcastic part of me has to wonder why the dad needs such a snazzy car. I mean, I'm pretty sure he doesn't need that in order to take his daughter to ballet practice or something. But anyway, very quickly, a man, or a testosterone-pumped young adult, and a car is a beautiful thing. Ask any guy that's ever named his car. Quickly, very, very quickly, the road warrior is born, dominating the road. And not only that, right? The boy, now a man, is transformed in front of us, and he takes utter control of the situation. Sauntering in, his confidence is high, his sex drive is in full gear, and the world is his for the taking. And so is the girl. Any other night, getting punched in the face by the prom king would have been humiliating, or degrading, or shameful. But tonight, it's a badge of courage, of bravery, and of independence. Because the boy uses what's at his disposal to get what he wants, to get what he desires. That car, it isn't an Apple, but it might as well be. Because he sunk his teeth deep into that Audi with his taste wetted forever. Now, many preachers and politicians and teachers, pretty much anybody who has ever heard the story of Adam and Eve, which is all of humanity, I think, will tell us that it all started with an apple. And that Eve's problem was that her sexuality was just way too dangerous. Which is totally confusing to me. Because I can't seem to find the words in the story of Adam and Eve that say, and Eve, being a gorgeous, curvaceous woman with long, flowing locks, knew how to seduce her husband into doing what she wanted. I mean, I've looked. Eve isn't looking for sex. Just as the boy in the commercial isn't looking for sex. Now, I'm not going to lie. This biblical story and the commercial are both full of desire. Because Eve desires something, and the boy does. Just as we all do. In some ways, desire is innate within us. And the marketing industry knows that full well. And they've done a great job of hooking desire and sexuality as one and the same. But let me be clear. Desire and sex don't mean the very same thing. But they'd like us to think it does. As I was thinking about desire, I wanted to find a commercial that sort of illustrated what I was thinking about. And I literally watch like 5 hours of TV a year. And so I had to ask some friends for just commercial help. And so, I mean, my friends were quick with their responses. And I expected all the GoDaddy responses, which I decided would be really put my job in jeopardy if I showed at church. But then you have the Hardee's and Domino's and Dannon. I mean, really, we thought it all began with an apple and a snake. But apparently hamburgers and pizza and yogurt and cars are all of the devil too. So what is it that the boy gains? What is it that he actually desires? What does Eve desire? Because the boy in the commercial, he doesn't get a girlfriend, unless maybe later on down the road he sweeps her off her feet or something. And he doesn't get a car, because I'm positive, I have a 16-year-old, I'm positive if I had an Audi, I'd be wanting the keys back as soon as he walked back in the door. And he doesn't become somebody that he wasn't already. He already had that prowess within him. But what the boy gains, when he gets to hold on to, is wisdom. And Eve wants that too. She doesn't want to tempt Adam, and she doesn't want to be in cahoots with the snake that's curling around at her feet. In my opinion, that snake didn't deceive her at all. She knew exactly what she wanted. Just as the boy knew exactly what he was doing. Eve wanted wisdom, and she got it. It's interesting to me that the powers that be who put the lectionary together pair Eve and the snake with Jesus and the devil, as if to say desire and temptation are the same thing. Now, I don't want to take the lectionary gods to task, but desire and temptation are not the same thing. Marketers want us to think they are. And they use our desire to tempt us into something. But I believe that desire can be a very, very good thing. Growing into wisdom requires pain and risk and desire. And at the risk of sounding heretical, it also requires sin. Now, I'm not saying that sin is a good thing, but what I am saying is that without the knowledge of good and evil, without that wisdom, we lack maturity. The boy grew up, and he had to at some point. He had to learn the ways of the world. And I'm wondering if maybe we weren't supposed to gain wisdom from the very, very start, from when God sort of spun the universe into being. Maybe things weren't really that utopic in the Garden of Eden. Now, before you start to wonder where I'm going, or think I've got it all wrong, I'm not looking for a get-out-of-jail-free card. It's just that God's got a lot of explaining to do about why he put that tree in the garden to start with, if desire and wisdom are so very forbidden. Because I'd like to point out one thing. Eve actually tells a little white lie before she ever tastes the apple. Now, I happen to be a big fan of Eve. I like her courage and her independence. They intrigue me. But if she is guilty of anything in this story, it's lying. And her first lie, at least the first lie that we know about, is when she tells the snake that God told her, "You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die." Is that what God told her? God actually said not to eat it, and she died. But God never said not to touch it. Eve added that. She embellished the story. What taints the whole thing is the lying, not the wisdom and not the desire. We usually look at Eve and Adam and think that they were as pure as driven snow prior to the apple incident. She lied before the apple. So in my opinion, the fall, as we call it, we commonly know it, happened sometime before that snake ever showed up. Because Eve and Adam already knew how to sin. This story is the fall into wisdom, into adulthood. And it embodies how complicated human wisdom and human desire are. I mean, and to illustrate this complication, weren't you happy when he swaggered into the high school gym? I mean, didn't you sort of want to cheer for him when he kissed the girl? And and then they pan at the end to this eye. Weren't you like, nice shiner? I mean, are we supposed to cheer when someone takes what isn't his? When someone acts in arrogance? When someone gets in fistfights? I mean, we aren't supposed to. But desire and wisdom, very complicated. I mean, is it good or bad what the boy did? Does it end up being good or bad that Eve tasted the apple? The fall into wisdom is complicated. Eve and Adam are cautioned not because wisdom and desire are so very, very wrong, but because of the great amount of responsibility that they entail. And God was right, and the snake was right, and Eve was right, that once they taste it, they're going to die. Because they did die to just being like children. Now, I can't take credit for this next statement. I read it someplace. But the statement was, imagine Eve before the fruit incident. And so I did that. I imagined Eve prior to the apple. And as soon as I start to do that, I come up with someone who lacks depth. I come up with someone who lacks a full range of emotions. I come up with someone who lacks zeal. And I sort of come up with the same thing if I think about the boy. if he always stayed the same and never ever went against the grain. Tasting the apple and tasting the car, it does change things. That's for sure. When the boy walks into school on Monday, things are not going to be the same. Just as things weren't the same for Adam and Eve ever again. They had to leave the Garden of Eden. But they were never going to stay there anyway. Because God needed them to leave. I think the proverbial apple had to be eaten because sin already existed. I don't have an answer to why. I just know that it did. And the only way to deal with danger, like snakes or anything else like that out in the world, is through courage. And you only gain courage through wisdom. And the only way to know that there are benefits to being honest, and to teaching others that there are benefits to being honest, like not sneaking behind God's back, is to know how dangerous lying can be. And you only gain that through wisdom. And the only way to begin to express compassion and care to a world that was going to hurt and suffer is to know the difference between good and evil. And you only gain that through wisdom. The only way to combat sin in this world was to combat it with love. And you only gain that ability to love through desire. And I would say that Jesus had a great desire for us, born of his wisdom of the world and his wisdom of humanity. If I were God, and I am fully aware that I'm not, but if I were God, I would take Eve and all her desire and wisdom and courage to work in this world. Because dang, I know that there are snakes around every corner that I turn. And if I were God, I would take that boy who throws caution to the wind for the sake of overturning the status quo and for standing up for the little guy. And if I were God, I would take you, full of potential and love and courage and bravery and desire and wisdom, to share the saving grace of Jesus with a world that so desperately needs to hear it. And so God does. That's what God does, is he kicks us out of the Garden of Eden into a world of temptation. And we are armed with only our desire for good and our wisdom to enact.